Welcome to the Brain Factor Podcast with Joy and Laura, powered by Meridian Healthcare, approaching wellness with heart, one life at a time, one community at a time. This is a science-based conversation about real life. Our goal? To leave you with a few nuggets of wisdom, smile on your face, and maybe even a laugh or two. So let's jump in.
Hi, and welcome to the Brain Factor. I'm Laura, and I'm joined here as always with my co-host Joy. And we're going to tackle some stuff today about identity, right? But in a very specific way. One of the things that has been coming up for me a lot that I wanted to explore here, and I've dragged Joy along on this journey, is this idea that when we are going through these like major life transitions, or healing from, something that was negative or trauma or, any of the many things being a human being causes us to have to heal from, that it shakes our identity in a way that I don't think enough people talk about. There's an identity crisis that can be born from healing, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time before we heal from something, sort of building an identity around the coping strategies.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Like maybe I'm the strong one, right? Or maybe I'm the, I'm a people pleaser, right? Maybe it's the opposite of that, right? And we build our identities around what can sometimes be in situations where it's unhealthy. And it's
and
trauma.
I'm super productive because I'm avoiding everything.
Right. Like I'm a perfectionist and I'm this and I'm that, right? And sometimes that's built in an unhealthy environment around it's coming from these negative coping strategies, these maladaptive coping strategies. And then we live X amount of time on this planet, years sometimes, building our identity around that. And then we reach a point where maybe we're healing from that, right? And there's this sort of messaging that we get over and over and over again that with healing comes clarity and confidence and all of these things, and it's this wonderful magical experience, which it is, but also, right, that's a marathon, not a sprint. It doesn't always feel like relief at first. You don't always get that clarity and that like instant confidence and knowing who you are now. So you're left with feeling like, okay, I've shed sort of that part of my identity, but what am I left with? Like, I don't know who I am anymore. Maybe the things that used to motivate you don't anymore. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
And you might not show up in relationships the same way, because that could have been the whole problem, right?
I'm just saying.
Right? Could have been the whole problem. And then I think it leaves you feeling like, if I'm so much healthier, why do I feel so much worse? And I think because you're feeling boredom, you're feeling grief, you're feeling this emotional flatness, anxiety about the future, right? This general uncertainty that sort of all of the narrative around healing and growing doesn't seem to leave a lot of room for that. But that's a very real part of it. I think that there's a gap. Right? There's this gap that's like, if I'm not this person anymore, so now I'm not the fixer. I don't have to people please. I don't have to fix everyone's problems. I'm healing from that.
Because you're taking care of yourself now.
But who am I if I'm not that?
I'm someone that takes care of myself now.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen immediately.
No, it doesn't.
Right? So like you might not recognize yourself. And I think that's an important, so like knowing that like, so much of negative identity, like negatively built identity, not negative identity necessarily, but like if it's built from negative coping strategies or maladaptive coping strategies, a lot of that tends to be centered around how we relate to other people and like how we earn love or feel like we have to earn love or safety or any of those things. And chaos, is something that we recognize and know how to deal with and all of that stuff. I think that when that is gone, in a way we learn to survive in that chaos. So it's like, in the absence of chaos, I have boredom. And so health starts to look boring and health starts to look unsettling and unfamiliar, and the unsettling and unfamiliar brings us anxiety and all that kind of stuff. So it can feel lazy. We can feel less passionate about life as we sort of flounder in this gap between healing and learning what our new identity is built on, right? We didn't build the old one in a day.
No,
So-
and that old one maybe you kind of miss a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it was something
Yes.
that you knew.
You knew it.
You knew it, even if it was unhealthy
if it wasn't great.
and you know it wasn't. Yeah, it was.
I know how to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do whatever this new thing is, right? And then I think that our relationships change because some dynamics of our identity are built around like your old role.
Right.
So in a situation of like a divorce, as an example, you were a wife and now you're not.
Right.
You know, you were a spouse and now you're not. You were a caregiver and now you're not.
Sometimes it's not out of something trauma born or from negative things too. Sometimes it's just a life transition with
That's
your
true.
relationships. Like you haven't experienced this yet, but I have. My kids kind of grew up and moved out,
Yeah.
and then all
Real
of a sudden
whole
you're
adults.
like, yeah, especially when the second one went.
Yeah.
Because it was like, well, what am I now? I've been like coaching softball and keeping score for soccer and going to school and doing all these different things for my kids for so long. And all of a sudden now I'm like, where are they?
Yeah, that is such a great point. And you know, I would argue too that is a version of healing, right? Because we hear,
yeah.
I know I'm terrible at this, but we hear it like from the time we have kids, like make sure you have your own life and your own identity. Nobody does
No,
it.
who? What?
Who does that? Right? That's
My
not
identity was go to
possible.
work.
A mom,
Like,
right? That's it.
yes.
And then like you're still mom, of
And
course.
you fit everything in around being a mom because your
Right.
identity clearly my identity was mom for many years.
Right. And then
Anything else I did, and I had friends and I did things and, you know, I went back to school, but
Sure.
it was all fit in around their schedule around being a mom because the most
Raising
important
children. Yeah.
person, the most important thing in the world to me was them.
Right.
Still is.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're still mom, but you're not
Yeah.
raising
No,
children
no,
anymore.
it's
That's
different now. Yeah.
So that's an identity shift for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, did you feel
I'm
that
sure
there was
there's some grief too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And healing, you
Yeah.
know, because you did neglect yourself. I mean, we chose that, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so did you find that there was a gap between like, oh, they're grown and I don't really know who I am as the
there
mother
was-
of an adult?
Yeah, definitely.
Did it take you a little while to figure it out?
Yeah, I think it did take me a little while, probably a long little while,
Long little while. I like
a long
that. I
little
like
while, and maybe sometimes I still don't know.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, there was a gap period of time with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. I think you're spot on that I think that this conversation is largely around like healing and trauma based and stuff, but like, yeah, I mean, all of this,
Yeah.
even aging.
To your point, it is kind of like a little bit of trauma too. when you're little babies, or you know,
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
it's
yeah.
happy.
I
It's
feel
just
like
confusing.
Ooh, jot that down. That's like a whole episode. The
Yeah.
trauma of being a parent.
No,
Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. Raising children.
the trauma of not having them under your feet all
Oh,
the time
yeah, that's
anymore.
right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like, tell your daughter she can come live with me.
Hopefully she's not watching
this episode.
But in both of those cases, in sort of a trauma-based healing and changing of identity, or just a changing of rules, or aging, and all of the things that come with that, right? I think that this phase is so uncomfortable because like it creates neutrality. Like all of a sudden there's sort of a space of nothingness.
Yeah.
And that is unfamiliar and really scary. When we can't answer, and particularly being like at a certain age and I can't tell you who I am.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a scary and unfamiliar place to be, whether it's a life transition or a trauma or any of that.
I do remember when my mom passed away, which was my very first like hugely significant grief that I experienced.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting there thinking, who am I in this world without her?
Absolutely.
I literally thought those
Yes.
things.
That is a perfect example of this, right? It's like,
how do I exist in this?
She was part of your identity. Having her was a given, right? And then you had to figure out who you were in
without her. Yeah.
And that comes with, oh gosh, I love that example, because that comes with aging too, right? It's like, now you're the matriarch.
Right.
That wasn't how you identified yourself.
That was a big job. It's my job to keep the family together now. Right.
So you identified yourself as the daughter more so, and now you're the matriarch of everybody, right? That's a whole role and identity change that then has to be explored. And that, it's not like, oh, she passes and I grieve and now I'm immediately into this role where I can explain my identity. Like, I got to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah.
I don't really know like what kind of traits go with that, and as relationship to myself, and then but what you find is that you're not fully rooted yet, in that phase, in that gap between healing and you're shedding your old identity and taking on your new identity. You're not rooted, and that's a scary and uncomfortable place to be.
For sure it is.
It's also wrought with possibility. And I think we miss that part.
Yeah.
That we can allow it to be a little exciting too, if we have enough clarity to sort of surrender to the process.
Yeah. Sometimes, especially when it's out of trauma, you're very deep in it, and it's hard to see that. So, but knowing that, like, if you know that now because you watch this episode and things happen, I hope it doesn't for you, but you might have some more clarity. Yeah. And be able to go, oh yeah, Laura said this was going to happen. Right. Normal. This happens to people.
It happens.
Absolutely normal. I don't know who I am, but that's okay.
Well, and I think that it's really important to remember, if you find yourself there now or in the future, that the identity crisis is right on time. It's not because healing failed. It's actually because healing was successful. Right?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
You shed the parts you needed to shed, and to think that you were going to be able to build simultaneously is not realistic.
No.
You have to shed and then rebuild, and rebuilding is scary, and it feels backwards. It feels like it's gone backwards, and I wish more people talked about that, because we talk a lot about the positives of healing and how beautiful it can be and all of that. And it is, but what you're shedding too is a survival based version of yourself. I think that's key, because now you feel the uneasiness of not knowing how to survive.
Yeah.
Like you said before, I knew how to do that. I mean, I might have been exhausted, and it might have been not prioritizing myself, and it might have been unhealthy, but I know how to do that. I could cope, I could survive, I could get through the day. I don't know how to do this new thing. I don't even know what this new thing is, right? Let alone how to do it.
Yeah.
And going back to relationships too, sometimes in the wake of unhealthy relationships, healthy relationships can feel like a threat. Boredom feels like disinterest, like silence rather feels like disinterest, and calm feels like boredom, and
that's a really good point.
And the absence of chaos feels like either the anticipation of the other shoe dropping, or of like almost like a lack of intimacy, a lack of passion, right? When it's calm and normal, when all you've known is chaos. And so that's an important thing to remember too, that it's not just suddenly going to feel good all the time, just because you got healthier. And that's a mixed message, I think, from what we hear the world talking about when they talk about healing. And you're learning who you are without pressure. And some people may have never not had pressure to be or do or perform or know who they are, or fix or care give or figure it out or be in charge, right? And now all of a sudden you have the absence of pressure.
Right.
What do I do with that? If I only know how to work in a pressure cooker, right?
Right.
So I think that's it's interesting to note, to do the pulse check that we're so fond of, right? To say that this is uncharted territory, and human beings, we don't like uncharted territory.
No, not very much.
No, we like the familiar. We like that, right?
So what are some ways that you can help yourself and support yourself through these changes?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think awareness is number one, right? But I think one of the biggest things is we just talked about the absence of pressure. Don't put pressure on yourself, right? Stop asking the question, who am I? Like, who am I now? I don't know who I am. I have to figure out who I am. No, you don't. That will come, right? That will absolutely come, because identity is not built on declarations. It's not deciding who you are and then doing it. It's built on habits and consistency and time.
So think about what you're doing.
Yeah, start to just explore. Explore, like, what feels good to me right now.
Take
what
a class,
feels healthy.
go for a walk.
Yes. What drives me now? What motivates me now?
Right.
What feels right for me? Start asking those questions instead of who I am, right? What feels, what helps me regulate? What's curious, you know? Just start asking those questions, and you'll go down a path of exploration, and then time and habits and consistency is what's going to build your new identity, not decisions.
So then on the flip side of that, would you try to identify what you no longer are?
Well, that's the healing part.
Okay.
We did that.
Okay.
We
already happened.
We already did
shed it already. This is what,
Yeah, this is sort of what happens in the wake of that. But you're absolutely right. Yes, like, that's the step one, right? And I think that society, and by society I mean like memes and TikToks and reels and all this stuff and hashtags and all this toxic positivity that sort of wraps these things up in cute little bows and presents it to us, and, you know, with some great music and good editing, makes us feel like we're supposed to figure this all out in real time. You know, I'm healed, and now this is who I am.
30-second reel.
Yay!
It's all good.
You know? So it's like, you know, knowing that that's not accurate, I think, is huge, and giving yourself the freedom and the space to rebuild. You know, you didn't build the previous version in one instant or with a series of declarations. You're not going to build the new one that way either, right? And then I think, you know, along the lines of what you were saying, like, you're shedding the old stuff, but like, consistently knowing what doesn't fit you anymore. Like, what did you shed?
That's kind of what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I guess maybe I said it wrong, not identifying it, but the things that don't fit in anymore.
Absolutely.
Like, people taking advantage of you don't fit in anymore.
Or like, if you're like
I'm not
doing
driven
things because well, I'm afraid of the ramifications, right? Maybe that was part of your
don't do things out of fear anymore. That last person did that. Name that in the healing part, and now I'm like, I don't do that.
Right. So that might be the parts of our identity that we do already know. You know, to speak to your point, like, we already know that we're a person who doesn't do this.
Right.
I might not know what I do instead, like, but I know what I don't do, right? So, like, I don't fix everyone's problems. I don't do that anymore. That doesn't fit me anymore, right? So I'm not a fixer. I might not know who I am instead yet, but I'll get there. But I know that part of my identity. So you're absolutely right? You know, so like, and then give yourself the freedom to grieve. This is a hard one, because you didn't want to be that person anymore. That's why you healed from it, right? But you're still gonna miss her, because it's all you knew. It's okay to feel
you knew
lost.
how to function that way.
Absolutely. You know, and also, one of the things that people don't talk about with living in chaos and living in experiencing trauma, right? There's adrenaline releases, there's an intensity, and we see this a lot in a really unhealthy romantic relationships. We see this a lot in like domestic violence situations, like that cycle, right? Because there's passion, there's an intensity of passion, a cycle, right? And that draws you in and pulls you in, and it's exciting. And the absence of that, when we go, ooh, that's toxic and I gotta go, the absence of that is like, now I don't, emptiness. Like, I don't have passion anymore, because we identified that as passion, right? So you're going to miss that. It's okay to miss that, and also know it wasn't what you thought it was, and it's unhealthy, and I want to heal from it, and not know what replaces that for you now, right? If that wasn't intimacy, maybe I don't know what that is yet for me. And I'll figure that out, you know? But that gap is so important, right? So missing old patterns, old behaviors, old identities doesn't mean that you want them back, right?
Yeah, and so giving yourself grace and taking the time to do it, like you said in the beginning of the episode. This is a marathon.
Yes, it is.
It's not a sprint. This can take a really long time.
And along those lines, like knowing that you don't have to have this new identity immediately, like figuring out how to be comfortable with that concept. And sometimes, like, I hate to say it, I would love to sit here and be like, and you don't owe anybody an explanation, because you really don't, right? You don't. But there's a lot of pressure to give explanations and to, answer questions and things like that. And sometimes it comes from a good place. People care about you. But like knowing that, like, being able to speak to that, like, I don't know yet, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm figuring all that out, and this is going to take a while. Like, I don't know who I am, and I don't know how I do that yet.
And that's an appropriate response
Totally
to say
is.
that to someone. And your friends are going to understand that, or your family, someone that cares about you, they're going to be like, great, well, let me know how I can support you.
Absolutely. That's the only correct answer, right?
Yeah.
So you're allowed to be undefined. That's something I think that's important to know, that as human beings, there can be moments in our lives when we're undefined, whether that's from healing from trauma, or that's like all of a sudden your kids are growing out of the house and you're like, I don't know. Okay, well, right now I'm undefined.
Yeah.
Right? They haven't really done anything yet, so like I'm not really the parent of a full-grown adult yet. I mean, they got a place and all. We'll see how that goes. But I'm not raising them anymore, although I'm still making their dentist appointment, right? So I'm undefined.
Right.
And that's okay. Be comfortable in that space, and you can experiment. That's the fun thing. You can experiment with, like, maybe I like this, maybe I like that, maybe I do this. No, you know what? That doesn't serve me either, right? We can continue to learn and grow, even in the absence of trauma and chaos of like what it is that speaks to us and serves us.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be inconsistent in this phase. There's so much value in consistency, but like,
no, it's good to be inconsistent when you're trying to figure something out.
Yes. Try all the things, and figure that out. And then, stability doesn't always feel safe right away, right? It can feel boring. It can feel...
especially if you were used to those ups and downs. At
the end of the day, as human beings, we don't trust the unfamiliar. So even if the unfamiliar was bad, we trust it more than the unfamiliar. Even if the familiar was bad,
yes,
we trust it more than the unfamiliar good in the beginning. That's just how our brains are wired, And so we've got to give ourselves the grace and mercy to kind of go through that process, before we figure out who we are now, right? So like, I guess the whole point is that healing doesn't give you a new identity overnight, contrary to what TikTok would allow you to believe.
Yes.
And that's okay. And take your time. You'll get there. Habits, consistency, that's what builds identity, not declarations. And know that that's normal, and allow yourself to live in that space of uncertainty. So if you're going through a transition, whether it's just a normal life transition that we all go through, whether it is something, the unfortunate grief of like loss and sort of normal trauma that we experience as human beings throughout a lifetime, or whether it's something deeper, just know that healing didn't fail because you don't know who you are right now. And if you stick to it and you reach out for support and you allow yourself that grace and mercy, you'll figure out who you are in this next phase. So good luck to you if you find yourself in that situation. And thanks for joining us today. Thanks for listening to The Brain Factor. Joy and I are so thrilled to be having these needed conversations. We'd love to hear your feedback on this episode, so if you could drop a comment or leave a review with your thoughts or any requests that you may have, it would be appreciated. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Living a healthier and happier life starts with one step, and we're excited to be on this journey with you. Until next time.